right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
All right, here we go. That was Ejiro Evero. We'll see a little bit more of him. He just finished his interview with the Texans, and he might be among the most mysterious of the candidates for the Houston Texans coaching job because very little is known about him. He toiled in anonymity while putting in a really good effort as the defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos in a year in which nobody was really paying attention to the Denver Broncos other than to watch low-light reels of Russell Wilson. They did a great job through the first 14 games of the season, and then as everything kind of unraveled towards the end of the year, the stats degraded. The Broncos lost a really bad game to the woeful Los Angeles Rams, and the defense still ended up in the top 10 in a lot of categories. The really critical thing was that Evero, up to that point, right before Nathaniel Hackett was fired after that disastrous Rams game, they were number 3 in points allowed per game. They were number 5 in yards allowed per game. The offense at that point was dead last, 15.6 points per game. And the defense just simply wasn't getting a whole lot of help out of the offense. Evero was dealing with a hodgepodge of practice squad guys and street free agents. Chubb, the best pass rusher, had been traded away at the trade deadline. It was that kind of a season. And yet, Evero, as a first-year defensive coordinator, put in a hell of an effort. And as I was watching him, I got to tell you, his personality was a little tough to pick up on. And I started to think, man, he seems a little bit like Dom Capers, which is why I got really excited when I saw this mic'd up.
You got on that stuff, you got to have conversations on, so everybody on the staff feels comfortable. Okay, and most importantly, you feel comfortable with it. Okay, because as you go in and you start to put those ready lists together, that stuff's important.
Yeah, no question.
Okay, so I got excited about that because I love Dom Capers, and Dom harping on the communication there is something that Dom was always very good at, but also something that the current Broncos players have gushed about, his ability, Evero's ability to communicate to the young guys, to the old guys, exactly what he wants. And that's something that you might be surprised at how poor some NFL defensive coordinators communicate and how often guys don't really necessarily understand their responsibilities. A lot of times when you ask why is a guy doing something stupid on game day, it's because the communication has been bad during the week. So to hear players like Patrick Surtain II, who had a really good year this year, talk about the communication, how important it is with Evero, I'm very impressed with that. Now you might ask, okay, why was Dom Capers on the staff there? Very good question, and it's because Evero was not only a first-year defensive coordinator, but he was dealing with a bunch of assistants who were also very green. So they brought in Ejiro, who's 13 years of experience, but this is his first year as a coordinator. Dom Capers as an advisor, decades of experience. And then of the 5 main assistant coaches, they had 7 years combined experience as in the NFL. Lots of college experience, but not much in the NFL. And then also our old friend Bill Kolar, for those of us in Houston, he was a defensive line coach. J.J. Watt notably got in a little bit of a argument with him on the sideline one year. So they brought in a bunch of advisors to help Evero out. And it worked out really well. So the communication is key. I told you that they've talked about him stressing it. Here's a little bit more of that mic'd up so you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I love that communication. Anticipate it.
1st and 10 now. Let's get D&D aware. 1st and 10. 1st and 10. Talk to everybody, Justin. 1st and 10.
Back up. Here you go.
What sometimes those guys get too fancy and they dance around. Just can use what you got.
Yeah, that's right.
Speed to power.
That's right.
So that was another thing. Dom talking to Evero about right there what I'm assuming was a corner blitz or a safety blitz, maybe a linebacker blitz, whatever it was. A lot of times, especially with the defensive backs, because they don't pass rush a lot, they have a tendency to get in there and then all of a sudden want to play their best Micah Parsons impression and hit a bunch of moves or something, when really they just need to go speed to power. And that's another thing that intrigues me about Evero. He coached for the Rams for 5 years. he was underneath Brandon Staley for part of that time. And Brandon Staley, of course, is a Vic Fangio protege. So Vic Fangio, who started off working out with Dom Capers, remember he was here in Houston as the defensive coordinator for Dom Capers, has a lot of those same elements. So people who are now subscribing to a lot of what Vic Fangio is selling and has done in the NFL over the past decade. But let's watch a little bit more of Ejiro in action, because you're going to see in press conferences, he's a pretty buttoned up dude. And I think there would be a tendency to think that maybe he's too reserved. He's a different guy with the players.
Good. Hardcore focus on your targets this week, right? Read your keys. Read your keys. Read your keys. Hey, you whip that guy in front of you, that's all you need to do, right? The rest of it will take care of itself.
So I'm growing more and more impressed with Evero the more I watch him. And part of it's a performance on the field. Part of it is you see enough stuff written about him. It's that classic, hey, this is a guy who's going places. This is a guy that has a plan. All of those things that you hear about guys like Mike Vrabel, Mike Tomlin, the guys who have whatever you want to call it, the it factor. It seems that people identify that in Evero. One notable thing about him that was curious was that he turned down the interim coaching job. At the time, I thought, without knowing anything about Evero or that he would be a Texans head coaching candidate, I just thought, well, that seems like a pretty smart and good move. Here's what he had to say about it at the time, because I think some people raised their eyebrows at somebody turning down the opportunity to help the team out, and maybe this wasn't what somebody who is selfless or team-oriented would do. First, this is what Evero had to say.
Well, I don't want to get into too much of the details, but, at the end of the day, this is not a situation that any of us really wanted to be in. We just all agreed that the best thing for this team moving forward was for me to continue to work with the defense, fully invested there, and I think that's where I could have the best value for this team.
So taking it face value, I think that makes sense, especially given the throttling that the Rams gave the Broncos in the final game that Nathaniel Hackett had after Nathaniel Hackett was fired. You could think, okay, well, I owe it to the team to put in a better defensive effort for these last 2 weeks. There was also the element that Evero, was very, very good friends with Nathaniel Hackett. They were college roommates back at UC Davis, and there were perhaps, conflicting personal feelings about all that. I don't need to get into all of that. He seems like a stand-up dude who knows what the hell he's doing. I think he's very, very detail-oriented, and he is very, very focused on communication, which I cannot stress to you enough as I try to communicate this to you. Communication is lacking, not just on a lot of NFL defenses, but in a lot of NFL organizations. So as a head coach, understanding that you need to help guys understand what they're supposed to do and what their roles and duties are is a very much underappreciated trait to have in a head coach. Very intrigued by Evero. D'Amico is still my favorite, but Evero has risen up the boards. The biggest thing he has going against him at this point is that he's a defensive-minded coach. And I got to have enough offsets on the personality side and the defensive side to be able to make up for the fact that, hey, if we're going to draft a young quarterback, I want to have somebody who can be here for year after year after year to work with and tutor him. It's a definitely a tiebreaker, and more so one that skews towards offense. But for now, it's D'Amico. Evero is somewhere below Ben Johnson and Shane Steichen on the spectrum for me right now. But hey, if you enjoy this, please hit subscribe, hit a like. They love that, and I would love you for it. Thanks a lot.